Creation story as Taino because even all cultures across the world have their own creation story. Creation stories serve different purposes. One purpose can be how to determine what is the conduct of the people of the culture. Sometimes it's to connect the conduct of the person to the conduct of so-called the heavens or their spirituality or their religious origins as well too. Which in the Taino community, what is the spiritual and what is the community and the culture is all one thing, as you guys will see from this story. So I'm going to leave the floor open for Nueva to give you the story. Okay.
So our story is the third cycle, the third story of the creation story. Okay, and our main character is Guayagona. Okay, now you all have pamphlets that say the story. Okay, you can follow along through there, but I'm going to explain it, and then you can look at that. In the pamphlet, they spell his name Guayagona, right? But we pronounce it Guayagona. Okay, so the story starts off on a boat. Okay, you have Guayagona. You have Anacahuilla, okay, and you have all of the women of the pueblo at that time. Okay, they're all on a boat together. Okay, now Guayagona had decided, without telling the cacique at the time, that he needed to get the women out of the cave that they were at, which was the cacique Huaga. They needed to get them out of the cave and separated from what was going on in the cave. There was a lot of things going on in the cave that he saw was bad for the pueblo. So his story was, we need to get them out. But he didn't tell the cacique at the time. So they're on this boat and they're traveling. And what he did was he told the cacique, look, there's a conch in the water. The brightest conch you've seen, look at it. And he said, one of these conches over here. So the cacique looked over at the boat and Guayagona had shoved them off. Okay, and they took off, just the women. Okay, so they sailed, and they went to an island, Martinino. Okay, and he had all of the women there. And he explained to them why he took them and why he needed to separate them from what was going on in the cave. Okay? Now, Guayagona was sick. He had a skin disease. Some stories say that it was syphilis. Others say it was other things, kind of depending on the person who was writing it at the time, the French, the Spaniards. They all said it was something different. But it was a skin disease altogether. After he had left the women on the island, he decided to sail out. He knew he was dying, right? So he's sailing on the boat. He knows his time is coming up, and he figured he'd just die at sea. But as he was sailing, Guamonito shows up out of the water. And you guys know that's one of the manifestations of Ave. She showed up in the water, and he was in complete awe when he saw her. He was amazed how beautiful she was and everything. She said, you need to wash yourself. So he started to wash himself with the water, and then they arrived on another island, Guanin. And when they got there, she put him in a state of healing. Technically, what she did was put him to another world, like another realm, healed him, and then brought him back. Right? But she put him in a state of healing, and he was healed. His skin disease was gone. Okay? After that, she gave him advice or secrets, in a sense. She gave him a siva, which is a rock. Okay? She also gave him, the name of the island is also Guanin, which is like gold, a gold disc. She gave him that. And she also gave him all the information he needed to use herbs as a healing method, as a healing tool. She used herbs to heal him, and then she passed that knowledge on to him. Okay? So he used all of that knowledge, and what he became, Guayagona became the first Boique. Okay? He used all the knowledge that Guamonito had given him to learn how to heal other people from the pueblo with herbs, with plants, with everything that was around on the islands. Okay, now, the cacique that got pushed off of the boat, okay? They say that when he got pushed off and he passed away, he became a star, okay? They call him the center light, which, as you guys know, the biggest and brightest star is the North Star, okay? And when he became the North Star, Guayagona was able to use that star to travel. So the reason he's so popular is he was also the first voyager to use stars and constellations to travel to where he needed to go. So he was able to navigate the oceans through that star. Yeah.
Alright, so I want to take over a little bit at this moment because there's things that in this story have a lot of representation in our culture, okay? So here we have the different categories. The characters in the story, who they became in the story, the locations that the story takes place in, and the significant objects and terminology inside of the story that are important for our education as a Concilio, okay? Let us first begin here with Cacique Anacahuilla, okay? As you see, even though he was the cacique at the time when there was no Boique, Guayagona felt that he had the need to do, as they say, do what I gotta do. And he did. And by doing that, he actually did a great service to the Taino culture, which we will discuss later. But at that point, it was just the cacique who was in charge. And Guayugona said, well, I gotta do this, and so this is why I'm throwing him right off of out of the canoa, okay? Now, while Bonito comes into play, not only in this story, but really in the whole rest of the stories of all the creation, all spirituality. Again, she's a manifestation of Atabe, okay? But we have here, at the end of the story, Guayugona becomes a Beheke. And he has his title, which means the first. And Guayugona, which is basically the brightest star. So it has kind of like a metaphoric reasoning behind it, because whoever's navigating on the ocean and the sea, what do they need to get to where they need to go to? Other than the currents, is the stars. Okay, so there's a lot of metaphors, a lot of analogies in this. So we have printed out all of the story according to this book. This is the book that I sent. Okay, here, and you can find how all of this makes sense in so many different ways. As far as culture goes, as far as seeing where the titleship in the Taino culture begins to become something so important, because a culture that has no order, then they tend to fall over time, okay? Then you get to see where is the terminology that's highlighted in this paper in bold, Kasibahagua, which is the cave, okay? Now, here we have Siba for stone, so it has to do with the cave, where they say that they originated from, okay? Now, these three locations, people speculate all the time because people hear stories, fables, and they try to say, oh, is it real? Where did this happen? Where in the Caribbean did this take place? They really don't know. Some people say Martinique is Martinique and a lot of different places, but this is not the case, okay? But you can speculate. It's all speculation. There's no way to really go back in time to prove it. But the Guanin place, which is the island of Guanin, it's speculated that it's a place where there is a lot of abundance of gold, okay? Already in the Caribbean, there is not a lot of places where you can find gold. The Spanish got there thinking that they were going to find a lot, like in China and India, but they did not, okay? But the Guanin has a significant meaning, okay? This word is still under study to find its true origin, what it really means, but it seems to be a tie between what the Guanin means when the cacique wears it and what is the place. So that's, again, something that we can speculate. You guys can become your own researchers and also study and find as well. Maybe you have your own hypothesis, okay? Now, in the story we have canoa. What is a canoa? Who knows? Anyone?
Como ellos se transportaban
Yes.
por el agua.
Now I put that first because this word, canoa, you're gonna understand why it's in a significant story connected to this in our second segment, which we're gonna be singing a song that is on the last page there. So that ties into that. But also has a significance of where the tree is standing and then it falls down and then they need to take out what's inside and they use it to then travel. In this story here, they use the metaphor of Guayuna's traveling across a plane like this. Now in physics, if you have only one plane, then there's no 3D, there's no world. So you need an up and a down and a back and a forth to create the whole world. So this, in there, they speculate that perhaps it even signifies the universe, okay? Because these guys became the stars. So that's, again, more metaphors for you there to find, okay? Now, can you pick that up? The guamo, as a lot of you know, very important object. So it's kind of a random thing that they would say. He would be like, ah, Kakuya, mira eso, yeah, look at that, what is that? To trick him, right? Why would somebody be like, wow, that looks so cool? Thing is that in the Caribbean, they can still find, from really like 500 years ago, still mounds and piles of these things. Because the Taino would use it, take out whatever, and they would throw it back, right into the water. So what ended up happening over time, they had to like collect them, and that's when you find them now sometimes on the edges of beaches and stuff. But originally, they would just be inside of the water, just in mounds. There's still a place right now near the Bahamas that if you go on a boat by it, you see a big mountain of just that. So to the Taino, that right there is a big deal. So that's why he must have been like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's that? And that would caught his attention, okay? So the Siva and the Guanin is not only what gifts they are, but why are they gifts, okay? Gold. Anybody have anything gold today? Any jewelry? Some of you like gold? Gold lasts a long time. In a lot of cultures, gold is a big deal. Not really much as silver or copper. Gold is the thing that's above all. So Taino have that because the Taino love things that shine, things that have a gloss. So when they're outside under the sun, and you see that from a mile away, it shines. Just like, for example, the pieces that we're wearing. They were made with gloss, so they were shine, so that way it equals spiritual conveyance to the person. Okay, so the Taino had a strong belief in that, so that's why they use gold. Okay, even in this here, which is Opiel, he has his eyes in gold because a lot of the times when they would make the chairs, right, the dujos, they would put in gold into the eyes. So it has to do with spirituality. So that's why the guanin made out of caona, which is gold, is such an important thing in this story, okay? But also too, I have here an example, okay, of why the Siba is important. Now let's say that she's Guabonito, right, for example, and I'm Guayuan, and I'm becoming this bohique, this knowledge that I didn't know anything about is now being given to me, okay? Keep in mind that there is now becoming the structure of cacique, bohique, the men on one side government, the women on the other side government, how to not intermingle amongst each other, but look outside of the tribe to continue to avoid diseases and things of such of incest, right? So you have that. So these things were basically marking him becoming the bohique, okay? Now, I have here something that is made of Siba, okay? Now, if you have to think about it like this, gold lasts a long time, right? That's part of its reason why it's such a big deal. But stone does as well. The pieces that we have are also stone because those are pre-Columbian pieces, so how long already they last. And still, like for example, this one still keeps its shine. Now I'm gonna pass this one around so you guys can see, okay? An example of what maybe Guabonito gave to him, okay? You guys can see, you can touch it. This is found in Calle, and I believe 1797. This was dug up and found inside of excavation, okay? So I cleaned it off and stuff like that so you guys can come see it today, okay? So you hold a piece of history. The piece that you see in the center is not the original piece. I just put it there for design. But the beads are from another necklace. Okay? So they use stone. Why? The stone lasts a long time. Even the Sphinx across the sea is still up. Okay? So this is why it makes sense why Guabonito would give him two objects with representation of not only spirituality, but also of longevity, of the power of the cacique, the power of the bohique. Okay? You guys can also see it in the back. And I want to ask also you guys, what do you feel the moral of the story is? Just to get your guys' take on it, okay? But first I want to point out again that this is the book. Now there's many, many different versions of this story, okay? Even us, we have a library full of these books, and about 5 of them have different stories, like just 5 of them themselves. Some say that he found Guabonito in the ocean, some say he found her while he was already in the island, some say something totally different, okay? But what this goes to show you is the power of research, the power of study. It's a very, very big deal. By studying all around, then you can pinpoint the information that makes the most sense. And that's how we learn these stories, okay? And since these stories are orally told, they get changed. It's like the game of telephone. You guys know the game of telephone? Somebody says one thing and another says another. So it's the same thing. So imagine, when they were talking to the Spanish or the French, when they had to write these stories down, I'm pretty sure some things didn't get told. Some things probably got, misunderstood or whatever you want to call it, okay? But it's important that we learn all of them so that way we can at least know all of the information and not just one information, okay? So I wanted to point this book out to you. If you guys need to take a picture of it later, you're more than welcome to. This book, I found this on Amazon. It's easily found, okay? Now, let's move up to the part where I'm going to ask you guys what you guys believe are the moral of the story, okay? Anybody have any idea? Would like to share? What they think it means, this story? Any guess? No? Okay. Now you guys know, if you can imagine us here, that we're living in an island right now, just us, okay, for example. Not everybody here, except for your family, is related, right? So eventually, as time goes, we want to continue our culture, we need to procreate, okay? But what then happens, if we begin to procreate only amongst each other, 3 or 2 generations down the line, then it's going to be incest. And what happens with incest? Then you have problems with development and things that continue on from there. So in this story, him taking the women out of the Casibahagua made absolute sense, okay? Because in there, people are becoming sick. Even him, he has all of this disease and stuff. Which in some stories, they say that he got that disease, the skin disease, because of the incest and the intermarrying with the family, inside of the family, okay? So taking the women out of there allowed them to be able to procreate with other tribes, with other peoples that were already around, okay? And as you know, history has proven, science has proven that the people that went to the Caribbean come from different places. Some from, Central America, North, South, all the way down to the tip. Even if you guys do your DNA test, you guys may come out that you are whatever percent Taino, and then you have some Inca, and then you have some Maya, maybe you have some Aztec. It's the same thing. Same thing happened to me. So this is just proof that these stories had some kind of basis in them, okay? Because even if the original people were there, other people came to the Caribbean and began to procreate with them. So it makes sense, okay? Now, another thing we can say is that the importance of not only the person that is in charge, right? But also the spiritual part, okay, of a culture. If you only have a person in power, then sometimes this doesn't work out, as you guys can see by history, okay? Another reason, the Bohica is kind of like the conscience in a sense. The connection to nature, because in the Taino culture, what is the plants and what is the healing that has to do with spiritual basis? You know, so this tells you again the importance of not only the separation, but also the need of filling in that gap, the spiritual gap, the healing gap. What do the people go to pray to? What do the people use to heal themselves? Even like how Alex was talking with Ricardo, he was saying, if you try this, this can heal you, this can help you. So even you with the knowledge of the plants, that helps. So imagine a culture without this knowledge. Then they're in the middle of the island and they don't know how to take care of themselves. So it's important when you're in some place where you live, human beings, they want to learn about their surroundings so they can take care of themselves. And we ourselves are part of nature. So it only makes sense that that connection between man and nature is there in the culture. So again, that's why it's a need for a Bohica is important. And then from there on, the Bohica and such, okay? Now, moving on to that, we have a random meaning, okay? Which has to do with physics, I would say. Or I would say, what is the interstellar galaxy, what is the interstellar world, okay? The Taino looking up from where they were, probably wondering what is going on up there, what is that up there? So sometimes in some stories, in some cultures, people make up like myths to explain why is that star there, why is that star over here? Because they need to understand. So sometimes it's easier to make a story up to make it make sense, okay? Not saying that this story is not real, because even then, how do we know? We really don't know, right? But sometimes in a way to translate knowledge to generations, you tell it in a nice story, it's easier to remember. Rather than just me saying, this is up, that's down, that's the sea, don't go over there. Different things. You know, you say, oh, this person is helping you, this is where you can get what you want to go. If you go there, it's dangerous. This is easier to remember. So again, these kind of morals that we took from it is important for us to learn as a culture, because learning the Taino culture is so multifaceted. The language, the culture, the food, the interminglings of the spirituality to the arts, which is, if you notice, a lot of Taino pieces that they find, they're all artistic. So it makes sense that from a spoon to a bowl to a clay pot to the way they're buried to the way they're dressed, everything has art in it. And every culture that's growing has art. Okay, so this again is a tie to what? Their culture and their spirituality. So the way we see it, this story embodies all of that. Because she gifted him, she could have gifted him something else. But why give her these things that he could wear, that he can keep for a long time? It made sense. Okay? So if nobody has any questions, we can then take a break to set up for our next segment, which is again has to do with something that's up here, which is the Ganoa. Okay? Any questions? Question or just stretch? All right. Thank you very much.